How's it going, everybody? RazingHel here, and today we're going to be talking about 5 glaring omissions in the iOS application for Stronghold Kingdoms, and I'm a little bit embarrassed that I really didn't pick up on them as much as I should have in the previous videos. So number 1 is the fact that you can't load formations. There's no way to save formations for your attacks, and there's no way to load them. So this is a pretty huge glaring omission. Now granted, in the original, when the desktop version of Stronghold Kingdoms was originally released, we didn't have this feature either, but after Firefly sort of added it, I just think that very few people would be happy going back to the way it was before, where you had to actually load all of the formations manually each time you wanted to deploy one. On top of this, we have the fact that formations are kind of difficult to deploy in the mobile version of the game, which makes the case all that much stronger for why we should be able to load our formations into it. And on top of this, there is the fact that there are cloud saves in Stronghold Kingdoms for attack formations, so I really don't see a reason why this shouldn't be enabled or why it couldn't be. The second one is that we can't load castles. I mean, this has been around since the start of the Windows version of Stronghold Kingdoms. We just can't save our castle layout, so this is really restrictive in terms of when it comes to repairing your castles. You actually have to manually place down every single component each time it gets destroyed, unless you use the desktop version of the game. That's going to be very limiting, I think, for people who come into this from the mobile side. So that's something that I think is absolutely mandatory that be added to the iOS version of the game. And once again, we have cloud saves for these already in the desktop version, so it's not an issue of the inability to sync these formations over, these castles and these formations. Okay, the next one is that we can't apply map filters on the iOS version of the game. So this is a pretty huge deal, because one of the best ways to keep an eye out for attacks is by simply enabling the map filter for it, and there simply aren't any map filters in the iOS version of the game. Now, I would make the case that we actually do need more filters on the desktop version of it as well, the Windows version, because I remember hiding things like monks behind merchants, for example. You can actually do that if you time it right, if you have the right research for it. It's not a huge deal that you can do it, because obviously it fits only very specific setups, but it's kind of funny that we don't have the filters necessary to see that even on the desktop, and on the mobile version of the game it's just nixed entirely. So I would absolutely love to see map filters. I don't think that's quite as important as the castle formation, or the saved castles, and the attack formations, but I think it is a pretty big quality of life improvement as well. Okay, the next one is one that I actually have brought up before, and it's that we can't filter messages. So in the desktop version of the game, you can actually type in the username. There's like a little search bar in your message or mail client in game, and it will filter the messages by that query, and I simply find it invaluable for keeping track of correspondence with people. Granted, you can use the folder system, but it is just so much better, especially when the same person can be in multiple conversations, in multiple threads, and those can span multiple folders, right? It's not like you're just communicating with a single other person, a single other player in the game. You're actually communicating with your entire faction or the entire house, and generally there's a lot of crossover between the members of each of those kind of threads. Those mailing lists tend to be rather large and include a lot of people, and there can be a lot of crossover between them. The last one is that there's no search for cards, and there's no recently played cards category. Once again, this is one that I have pointed out before, and I find it very time consuming to have to actually sort of swipe through the entire card category to find the card that I want to play. Granted, there are shortcuts to these cards just about everywhere on the interface, and that can be a help for, like, if you were just getting into it, I suppose you can sort of learn to do it that way. But I came at it from the perspective of, I always click the cards button when I need cards, and then I search for the card that I want. So I especially feel that this would be a welcome addition for veteran players. Maybe not for people just getting introduced to the game from the mobile side, but if anybody's coming to the mobile from the desktop, I think the ability to search for a particular card is going to be sorely missed if it's not included. In addition to this, there's no recently played cards category. I mentioned this in the last video as well. I think it absolutely needs a recently played cards category, because I think that if it is not possible to implement the search function for whatever reason to actually search for the card you need, at least add a recently played cards category so we can find the cards that we use most frequently. Because let's be honest, the majority of cards cards in Stronghold Kingdoms they don't see much use. Like there's a handful of cards in Stronghold Kingdoms that most players use like on a daily basis, and the rest of them, they're very situational, and in general it just would help if we could see those cards that we use all the time if we can't go ahead and search for them. Depending upon your aptitude, like if you're somebody who likes launching stuff from a command line, you're probably going to miss the search feature more. But then again, granted, you are on a mobile device and it's a little bit harder to type, so I'm a little bit divided on that. But those are 5 what I would consider to be glaring omissions from the mobile version of Stronghold Kingdoms, at least on iOS. And like I said before, I'm a little bit embarrassed that I hadn't picked up on some of these and pointed them out. Like I kind of realized it, but then when I actually did the video, I kind of forgot about it for some reason. Maybe it was because I'm not actually developed in that world, and a lot of the things I discussed were just me loading up a simple attack and not actually trying to go into the specifics. It just slipped my mind for some reason. There are things I shouldn't have missed, right? The lack of the ability to load formations for an attack is huge, and I didn't even touch on that at all. Same as the fact that I can't load a completed castle into my village. It's huge. Can't apply map filters is big. I don't think it's as nearly as glaring an omission though as those other 2. And given the fact that I actually covered attacks and I covered repairing castles, I'm just, how did I overlook that? It's it's a regret, I guess you could say, of mine. But anyway, let me know what you think. If you have any additional ones, please add them to the list here. Maybe we can actually get some attention for this, and maybe Firefly can update it, because this is absolutely essential functionality that should be in the game, regardless of the platform that it is currently on. It can be on Windows, it can be on Linux, it can be on iOS, it can be on Android, and we need most, if not all of these. These are like, they've become essential to the Stronghold Kingdoms experience. So thank you very much for watching, as always, and I hope to see you next time.